Thank you for listening to this episode of a Vietnam podcast. It's me, your host, Neil Mackay. Before we get started, I just want to say two massive thank yous to our partners for this episode. First of all, for many months now, it is the Seven Bridges Brewing Company. As you guys know, I absolutely love craft beer, and I love their craft beer especially. Go check out the Hai Van Haze. It's one of my favorites, named after the Hai Van Pass up in Da Nang, where they're from originally, but they now have tap rooms all over Saigon. They're award-winning craft beer. So go check out their beers at their Le Tanton location, which is in Japantown. And if you know about Japantown, it's some interesting people watching there, shall we say. So go down to the Japantown, get some pizza slices, or check out their new location on Hai Ba Chung. Also good people watching, but not quite the same. And they have locations all over Vietnam, so they are amazing. Thank you very much for supporting us. And also a massive shout out to the Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar. They started off in Phu Quoc, where I did probably my best ever comedy show to about 50 people there. Never ever forget that. It's an amazing location. So if you're in Phu Quoc for a holiday, make sure you check out the Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar. Then they opened up one on Pham Viet Chan in the Binh Tan district, where you can find me every single Tuesday night doing their quiz night. We're normally packed out, so if you want to come and get a team, make sure to message me or message the Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar to book a table. And they've just opened a new location on Chan Nao in An Phu with the best rooftop view over Landmark 81. So head to that location, and if you want to get a free beer, send me a message. The first 5 people to send me a message will get a free beer, thanks to Ian from the Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar. So thank you very much to Seven Bridges Brewing Company and the Rabbit Hole Irish Sports Bar for supporting a Vietnam podcast, and enjoy this episode. Cheers.
Everyone is on social media, even my mom. So they spend most of the time on social media. I do hope that in the future, we will be more aware of this problem and how we use social media as a tool for us, rather than letting social media influence our behavior in our life.
Welcome to another episode of a Vietnam podcast with me, your host, Neil Mackay. Thank you so much for listening, whether this is your first time or your 100th time. I cannot believe that so many of you listen to this podcast, and we are now in the top 5% of podcasts in the world, the longest running English language podcast in Vietnam, as far as I know. If you want to correct me on that, that's fine. But I started this podcast in 2019 as a hobby because I was bored one day. I came to Vietnam in 2015 for a holiday, came back in 2016, and 9 years later, I'm still here and absolutely love Vietnam. Now, this podcast, we share stories of people connected to Vietnam, and crazily, we are in season 13. Now, don't ask me what is a season. It's an arbitrary thing that I just decide because it helps me make more episodes. Some seasons have been 3 episodes. I think the shortest was 5 when we were in lockdown, so that's fair enough. I think the longest has been 12. I generally aim for about 10. But this is season 13 after a short break. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for listening to me. And I'm, again, as always, really excited in this episode to talk to my guest. Now, she is the founder of Career Lab. She is also a TEDx speaker, which I am really impressed with. That's such a cool thing to say. She is the community leader of Workflow, where we are right now enjoying a delicious coffee and this amazing setup. So thank you so much for letting us record here. And most impressive of all, she has over 80,000 followers on LinkedIn and is, I would say, a LinkedIn expert, and even analyzed my LinkedIn for me, which was so cool. And I recently got told that I'm a bit of a numbers guy, which I didn't realize. And yeah, I am massively a numbers guy. You told me I was in the top 23% of, not influencers, how would you call that?
Okay, LinkedIn creator.
LinkedIn creators, how cool is that? My guest today, I'm really excited to introduce, is Adele Doan. Thank you so much for joining me on a Vietnam podcast and hosting us here in this amazing co-working space.
Thank you, Neil, for inviting me. So, really happy to be here. I think we've been connected for a while on LinkedIn. And then when I saw your LinkedIn profile, I know what you are doing. And I think it's quite a cool idea to, to do some kind of content collaboration. And I love doing podcasts. I have also a podcaster myself, but I give it as a hobby. Like the really personal podcast is not about you, like talking about something other than our personal life. And I really appreciate and admire what you are doing.
Oh, thank you. So is your podcast, is it in Vietnamese or in?
Yes, it is in Vietnamese.
Nice. Where did you learn English? Because I'm always just so amazed the amount of Vietnamese people that speak perfect English better than me.
I mean, I'm born and raised here. I learned English here in Vietnam. But I think I have a lot of foreigners who, as a friend and who is partner. And I also have a lot like Viet Kiều friend who, Vietnamese but studying abroad or living abroad for a long, long time. So I talk with them every day. So I think I catch up them with their English ability and also their accent. So I do sound a little bit like an American accent. So yeah, hope it helps.
One of the coolest things I think that maybe ever happened to me was I taught this same class. I used to be an English teacher, not anymore. I taught this same class for I think about 2 years. And then I went on holiday. I went back home to Scotland, I think it was. And so a teacher had to cover for me. And when I came back, she was like, they sound really Scottish. And I was like, no way they don't. And she's like, trust me. She's like, I think his name was Harry. She's like, Harry sounds just like you. And I hadn't noticed it. And then when I came back in the class, I heard Harry say to the other student, what are you doing? And I was like, oh my goodness. And my wife walked by the classroom, who's American. She taught in the same school. And she's like, you're so Scottish. I can hear you from the other classroom. You're like, sit down. And I was like, oh no. So I think a lot of people mimic the teacher, right? So did you have an American teacher?
I don't really have a like, English teacher myself. I mean, I learn English by myself, but I think my teacher would be like American series.
Yeah, American TV
Yeah,
shows.
I love Friends, How I Met Your Mother, and all that kind of series. So yeah.
And even recently, I was talking with this guy who worked for Eddie's Diner in D1, recently, a couple of years ago. And he sounded exactly like he was from Birmingham, which is a very specific accent in the UK. And I was so confused. And I thought, he must have studied there. He must have lived there because his accent, like Birmingham is quite a unique accent. And I've never heard anyone else in Vietnam with that kind of accent. So I said, where did you learn English? Did you study in the UK? Never left Vietnam. How do you sound like you're from Birmingham? He said, I watch Peaky Blinders. I was like, that is crazy. So he didn't even have a modern Birmingham accent because the Peaky Blinders, I think, is set like 150 years ago. I've only seen a few episodes, but set a long time ago, right? So he had like a very unique English accent. But I have a question for you that I've not asked anyone in a long time. So as a English-speaking Vietnamese person, have you ever had somebody talk about something in English, not thinking that you could understand what they were saying?
You mean like somebody talking to me in English?
No, and maybe you just even overhear somebody like in a lift or even on the street, maybe talking shit about Vietnam or saying something bad, which they don't think, because I think I've done it before, and my wife has nudged me and she's like, people fucking speak English here, stop saying that. I can't remember what it was a while ago, but now I'm more cognizant that most people can understand what I'm saying, and I'm just wondering, has there ever been a time where you heard somebody say something?
Yeah, I think it's really rare for me, like listening to people talking bad about Vietnam or talking English without, aware that I understand English. Because I think my face and then my kind of backgrounds and all my outlook give them some sort of idea I might be a foreigner. I may be like Chinese, Korean, that sort of thing. So yes, that's the first thing. And I think here in Vietnam, people started to aware of that. Vietnamese people really good at English, especially a new generation. So there's a different generation here in Vietnam. So I kind of like Gen Y millennial myself. So my background is I started my early career without a little bit support about English. So I had to learn English by myself. But the new generation, Gen Z kind of thing, they got support from their families and their parents quite well off, I would say. And then they learning English from really, really early stage and early age. And I think most of them can speak English at I think it's like 7 out of 10 level. So it's not like you living here in Vietnam and have the awareness that, okay, it's going to be hard here in Vietnam as a English speaking people, but people kind of understand, at least like in Saigon. Oh, I live in Saigon and everyone can speak English pretty well, even like with waiters and waitress and people who serve here in Vietnam. Because people who working as a server is not because their main career is just because they want to have part-time job. And a lot of like staff here in workflow, they are like uni student they work for, they study at really like well-known university here in Vietnam, so their English is pretty well as well.
Now in Vietnam, you can't graduate without getting a certain proficiency level in English, right?
Yes.
So the generational gap now, the divide I see is massive. There's people in Vietnam over a certain age, I just don't expect them to speak English, and most of them don't. But when you meet the younger generation, it's just now, it blows my mind. And I think about being here for 9 years. We were teaching 3-year-olds 9 years ago. They're now 12. And if you've been learning English since you were 3, it's not even like a second language. It's just your language. But I mentioned to you before we started, and you told me, so you're from the North. And I was telling you that just this week I was meeting with one of my colleagues who's from the North, and the North has a very different accent. And she was surprised when I told her that I can tell when somebody's speaking in English, a Vietnamese person speaking in English, if they're from the North.
How?
You gave it away already.
Oh.
You said Gen Z. So in the South, they would say Gen Z or Gen Z. And that was the exact example I gave her. So if you are listening to this link up in Hanoi, that's a perfect example of, and she said, how can you tell if they're speaking English if they're from the North? And it's just that tiny little thing. I don't speak Vietnamese. I can't understand the language, but I can understand those little differences.
I think because of like a lot of like English word that kind of normalize, we normalize that and we use that in the daily life, like Gen Z or marketing, that sort of thing. And people kind of have like, because we normalize it, so we don't speak like English speaker when we say that word, right? Because it's kind of weird and like a little bit show off to other Vietnamese. So we can say Gen Z. So instead of Gen Z, oh, what a word. Okay, Generation Z, right? So
It's a mouthful, Generation Z.
yeah, it's kind of odd and weird to say that in Vietnamese.
But in the South, they would say Gen Z, right? And you say Gen Z. Yeah, so it's those little small differences that I love. So you are the LinkedIn expert, right? You got over 80,000 followers. How does Gen Z interact with LinkedIn in Vietnam? Because I know traditionally Facebook is king here. I mean, I think that might be waning. I'm interested to hear your take on that. But when I first came here, everything was done on Facebook, and they talk about Facebook dying in the West but in Vietnam. But I don't know, is that changing? And how is the younger generation and even the older generation in Vietnam acting to LinkedIn?
That's a really interesting question because I have a lot of things to share about that. I think different generation, they have a different takes on LinkedIn. For example, the generation who was born like, I think, Gen X before, they mainly they have a Facebook account, they have a Zalo account, and also they have a LinkedIn account. For the long time, they use Facebook for friends and family and some of their network. But Facebook here in Vietnam is getting kind of annoying to those people.
Just what is Gen X, by the way? I'm so terrible with these things. You said Gen X, and I'm sitting here racking my brain. I'm like, what is that?
People born in the 1970s or 80s, sort of thing.
So before millennials.
Yeah, before
and
millennials.
After boomers.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay, even boomers. Okay, so for those kind of generation, they think that Facebook is kind of dead. They want to keep it just really close to friends and family. But like Facebook getting to be a news platform, and all the drama and all the like news is getting all over the place, and they think that they still need to have a social media that can focus on one specific need, is for their career, for their network, for professional networking. So a lot of people like me and other generation, like after boomer, before millennials, they started using LinkedIn for really specific need, is for professional need, professional networking, that sort of stuff. People like me, kind of like in between Gen Z and Gen X, I mostly use I use LinkedIn for since I started my career back then 2016, and I've been using that since then because I am a headhunter myself. So yes, I have to use that to find candidate. But it's come a part of my career as well, and we love that platform because it's less toxic, less drama, and we can convert a lot of like lead and benefit from that platform. So that's why I'm like, using LinkedIn. For Gen Z, why they are using LinkedIn? I think a lot of Gen Z they studying their career, and a lot of them go to like international university, or university have kind of like international exposure, and the people talking about like LinkedIn as a like online resume, and they have to do that as a part of their work. And I think I also contribute a little bit into that because last year I created a program called LinkedIn Student Influencer because I want to I want more students they know about LinkedIn and they know how to use LinkedIn for their career, finding a job, updating their resume, finding a mentor and stuff like that. But I cannot do that by myself, like, because my time is limited. I also have to work and make money. So I create a program called LinkedIn Student Influencer, why I teach LinkedIn for student leader, the president of the student club and stuff like that. And they've been spreading LinkedIn around their community and their network. And I see a lot of students, they've been helping other students to utilize LinkedIn for their career. And I think it's a really good sign. So I think I do contribute a little bit into that. And now I saw a lot of students who serious about their career and focus on career. They started using LinkedIn more for sharing their knowledge, not the knowledge, sharing their journey, I would say, and connecting with other senior executive and senior people in their field, which is really exciting and good signal for LinkedIn here in Vietnam.
Well, I have a really important question for you that I was thinking about on the way over here. And I think it's something that I don't fully understand. I've been here 9 years, but I don't understand everything. And there's a lot of stuff in Vietnam I know nothing about and I don't understand about at all. And I was like, I'm really excited to ask you this question because I want to know more about it. What is work life like for young Vietnamese? Now, you mentioned people work in a cafe, people serve coffee, but what kind of jobs do they do? I used to think this even when I was young, when I lived in the UK, right? When I was young and I was finishing university, I'd drive through the city centre in Glasgow and there's all these office blocks with all these glass windows. And I used to think, what are people doing there? I don't really understand. Here in Vietnam, and we're obviously way more in the future now, what do young people do? What kind of jobs do they want? We obviously know, I think it's a little bit unspoken that we know the wages are lower here. They don't get paid as much. And I've sometimes done the math and I'm like, okay, so they don't get paid as much. But when I was in university, I didn't get paid much either. And I remember the price of beer. So just for an example, right, I got paid £5 an hour in a supermarket. I think now the minimum wage is like £12. I'm not sure, something like that, right? But £5 an hour. And I always compare everything to beer. A pint of beer was about £2, £2.20, maybe a bit more if you go somewhere nice. But as a student, I wasn't going anywhere nice. You get it cheaper. So about £2. So it took about 20 minutes of work to buy a pint of beer. And then here I hear that people make about 30, 40,000 dong an hour in a cafe or in a restaurant. So I'm like, okay, so that's in today's money, maybe £1.50. I think I can't remember the conversion for a pound. For a dollar, it's about $1.25, $1.50 an hour, which is not much. But again, I compare it to the price of a local beer, not a craft beer, because those are different. But I compare it to the price of a local beer, and I'm like, it seems about the same, and you're not expected to make a lot of money in university. So when people are like, oh, people don't get paid much money, and I'm like, yeah, the students don't get paid much money. And I know people who work in professional corporate jobs also are still not getting paid as much, but everything costs a lot less here. So that was a long, convoluted question to ask. What is working life like for young Vietnamese people here, and how are the salaries and the living arrangements?
I've been podcasting for years, and the number one tool that helped me become an award-winning podcast producer is Descript. No matter whether you're a tech wizard or a beginner like me, Descript can help you with everything you need to start your own podcast. If you want to start your own podcast today, download Descript. The link is in the show notes. It's my number one recommendation to help you create a podcast easily, smoothly, and it has heaps of AI features that make your podcasting even better. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Let's get back to the episode.
Oh, that's really diverse. I would say this is a new generation. They have a lots of opportunity, and they explore different pathway in life, in their career. So I would say, first of all, if you are a student that's still at your university, I think they still get the support from their parents, and their parents they work hard in the past, right? So pretty well off. So okay, they can support their student during university time. So money is not the big issue, or a lot of big it's not a big pressure for student here. So I would say student, they have a very interesting choice of life. Some student, they decided to work at a cafe as a server or as a bartender, not for the money. I would say not for the money. They work here because maybe they love that cafe, they love the vibe, they love the design of that cafe, or they work here because they want to explore the new pathway of like being a bartender, being someone who work at the F&B business, F&B industry. Because most of the students, they will go to university. I think the main major would be like economics or engineering, that sort of stuff, not barista training. So working in a cafe give them the interesting experience. Like, I want to experience the life of barista. Maybe I'm good at it. Maybe I'm not, right? So that's the first option. I think the second option I understand is that a lot of students, they're working really early in their career. Like first year student, they started working already, and they have wide range of choices for their job. Like either they can work as a personal assistant, they work as a like marketing intern. I think there are a lot of company and expert, and they open those opportunity for university student, because the salary is not that high. They hardworking. They learn everything fast. So this really the good match for for, let's say, the new startup founder. They want to bootstrap a new thing, and they don't have a lot of money to pay for full-time staff, and they're looking for intern or student who is like bright and hardworking, and also like smart, and can do things that uncertain, right? Uncertainty is not a thing for people like me. I'm looking for something really like certain, really stable for my life in the next chapter. There's a second option. I would say a lot of people doing like a part-time job, intern job. And another interesting part is I saw a lot of students, they start their own journey, start their own business, their own media channel, and do things with that. A lot of people that are students that I know, they are the hot TikToker. They are the like hot face in social media, in Instagram or TikTok, or they start their own small business, selling the office stuff or the cute things online. That's really interesting. That interesting option that I don't have when I was a university student.
So one thing is, I've always been told since the beginning that Vietnamese people are very entrepreneurial, and that thing that comes through. And it's interesting that we didn't have that option. And now you can have a shop and a business, but then you combine it with a TikTok and you show off the pussies. And if you're attractive and you're good looking, then suddenly people are buying your pussies. And this actually leads me to another question that I really want your help with. I don't know the answer to this. So something has just popped up where we live. So we live in Tan My Loi, which nobody knows where that is, because I think 5 years ago it was a swamp. And by the look on your face, I don't think you know where it is either, right? But it's in District 2, but it's not Tao Dien. And just in the last month or so, all these buildings have popped up, and they have on the logo is Biu Star. Biu Star. Do you know what this is? No. So there's a couple other businesses with similar businesses. So we looked it up the other day because they've just popped up, and we're like, what is this? So what we think it is, well, we're pretty sure what it is. they're exactly what you said. They're like TikTok businesses or social media businesses. So we looked on their Facebook, and one, they were advertising for like agents and consultants and headhunters to come in and find people and work in the business, and they would help with their TikTok or their Instagram or whatever it was. They would answer questions from listeners. They would help them with problems. And then the other thing they were advertising for was for these attractive, young, talented Vietnamese people who were going to come. And so this, to me, I was just like, this is a brand new business. And they're building 10-story buildings, which must just be filled with influencers, TikTokers, Instagrammers. I'm like, this is crazy. This is now a job. They're advertising salaries, 10 to 12 million, I think it was, part-time, to come in. They obviously have all the equipment, they film it, and then they have the support staff to help build your channel. So have you heard of similar industries? Or?
Well, yes, this kind of is a growing industry. What people is kind of like MNC, like multi-network. So there's an agency. There will be an agency or company who run everything, like build up, like finding talent, build up talent, build up their channels, and take all the booking and all the business deal for those kind of talent. So it's not something new here in Vietnam. I think the new here is the platform. So in the past, YouTube will be the platform that people. I have a friends who are working for Creatory, who's a founder of Creatory in the past, and they been building up a lot of talents like streamers and like hot influencer on hot face on YouTube, and then they create their channel on Facebook. But most of the time will be like YouTube and Facebook. But right now TikTok will be the main channel, and people like tailor their strategy for that platform. So instead of being a YouTuber, we will be a TikToker. It's just a different kind of platform, but it's growing very fast. And I know it's a crazy industry because it's a kind of like interesting and fascinating job, like you don't have to be expert, you don't have to spend like 9-10 years working on your expertise and building up your competency and everything to be expert in one field, and then you start sharing your knowledge. Because the TikTok is more like entertainment industry, so you just have to be a good content creator. I think a good content creator also a talent. Not everyone can create like interesting content like consistently. So they build up a new kind of career as a content creator, and especially for a platform called TikTok. And I think it's funny to see that people, doing stuff online. It's also interesting and fascinating to see that. But why I would stick with like LinkedIn, because I think most of there's a saying in marketing that stay where your client is, right? So my clients most of the time they are on LinkedIn, because my client would be from the range of like 25 to 35. So they are not on TikTok that much.
Kind of breaks my heart a little bit though that we think of these content creators as good at what they do, organic content creators, but then you find out there's actually a big company behind them that's feeding them what to do and directing them, and you're like, oh, this is not as organic as I thought it was, because they're being helped. That's not a bad thing, it's just it kind of breaks your heart a little bit. And then also I was talking with my wife as well. So it's a new industry, right? And I feel when I was younger anyway, people, not everyone, but people, I mean, I wanted to be a rock and roll star, right? Which has nothing to do with your good looks. And I couldn't play any music, so that didn't help either. So I never became a rock and roll star. But a lot of people, they wanted to be models or actors, singers, things like this. And it's based a lot maybe on their attractiveness. They're like good looking. So it's not changed, but now do you feel like younger people, they're not like, oh, I want to be a model or a singer? They probably do, but it opens up a new pathway. And I guess as an old man, I was saying to my wife, it's a bit of a short career, isn't it? Because it's based on your looks. Like you said, it's not based on knowledge. And again, being an old man, so what happens after you're not attractive anymore, you get older? But then I was like, I guess that's just an age-old problem that every generation has maybe had. But do you think that's more of a problem because more people can be creators, and if it's because you're good-looking male and female? And I see these creators going into this building, the Gen Z, as you call them, very young, makeup on, male and female, funky clothes. I'm like, what are they wearing in the middle of the day in Saigon? That is a big furry jacket that's really warm. And so they're wearing different clothes. And I don't know, a little sad part of me is like, that seems like quite a fleeting career and not something that sets you up well for the future.
I think in the beginning, yes, people have type concern about that. And then in the beginning of any booming industry, that will be the problem. That a lot of people get into that without knowing what they are getting to, right? And it's a huge demand, so people kind of FOMO about that path. Being a content creator, get famous online and stuff, and selling and being KOC, and you make a lot of money out of it. So every new booming industry or niche that have that like crazy beginning, a lot of people get into that. But I think over the time, people like the industry will filter out those kind of people. So at the beginning, like TikTok, I saw a lot of people just like creating content online and call themselves a content creator. But after 5 years, people started thinking about, okay, if content creator is a job, okay, how can I be qualified for my job and how I can do my job better? What is a work ethic that I should do as a content creator? Should I, create content about every topic and try to get most views and impression as possible or not? So people started thinking seriously about their career as a content creator. And also there's other pathway that I can see that people don't call themselves as content creator, but they utilize a platform to do their job better. And even I don't use TikTok that much, but I kind of follow few people there, and I know that their main job is not like content creator or TikToker. Their main job is like designer, fashion designer, or like artist or a writer. So their main job is a different field, and they still focus on their expertise and building up their expertise, but they leverage and utilize the social media and TikTok for their business and for their career. And this is a type good balance. You don't have to do everything for the views and for the impression, but they do that because it's kind of leverage and it supports your career more. And because right now everyone is on social media, even my mom. So that's where the client is. You have to be there. It's just like in the past, people more like doing things offline. Go to the market and go to the fair and go to like a shop to do things. Now they spend most of the time on social media. It's just like you shift their focus on where your clients and your audience is.
If you're thinking of starting your own podcast and you don't know where to begin, then get in touch with me. Not only do I make a Vietnam podcast, I make smarter podcasting, and I run 7 Million Big Podcasts, where we help people make the best podcast possible. If you want to start a podcast, book a free discovery call with me, and I can chat you through very quickly what you need to do, how I can help you, and how we can help you make the best podcast possible. So get in touch. The link is in the show notes.
I think people, especially in Vietnam, but I know worldwide, are becoming more nuanced on how they use social media.
Yeah, that's a big problem. I don't really have a solution for that. I try to, somehow for my content, I talk about those kind of problems, about how we use social media and how we, pay attention on how social media, even right now, like how AI and ChatGPT influence our behavior. And I think as a content creator myself and other content creator that I know have a good intention of bringing good things to people, they already talk about that. And I do hope that in the future that we will be more aware of this problem and how we use social media as a tool for us to achieve what we are doing, what we want to achieve, rather than letting social media influence our behavior and our life.
Because there's many people use social media, and I still do a little bit, but not that much, just for fun. They like posting stories or they like posting stuff of their own life. But then there's another part of me, and what a lot of people do is they use social media to support their business, right? So it's, I mean, even the Kardashians, I guess, right? They're not posting the thing on social media just because they like it. They're doing it because they get paid and things like this. And that's what I mean about being more nuanced. And you're suggesting that these people using the TikTok and building that up. They learn how to use social media to essentially market their business and expertise in what they do. And it's interesting hearing you say that, because I don't think of myself as a content creator, but I have recently more and more like I'm creating content. So I guess I'm a content creator. And this podcast, I do for the love of it. I think in 5 years since I started, I don't do it for the money. I've made a tiny amount of money, but not anything that you would, it's like a nice little bonus when I get some money for it, but it's not a full-time job at all. So what I did, and I was telling you this before, I made the decision a few years ago was, okay, it's going to be, for me anyway, really difficult to be a full-time content creator, to take this podcast that we're on right now and make a full-time living out of it. And I was like, maybe I could do it. I'll start approaching tourism companies. I start approaching bigger sponsors, get better equipment, but I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it 110%. Like I have to do this my one thing and to make this my full-time job. And then it makes me really pigeonholed into being a podcast about Vietnam. So, I mean, I may not live here forever. So if I leave Vietnam, suddenly I've left this podcast. I mean, I could keep doing it, but it would be pretty weird and awkward to be doing a podcast about Vietnam if I left. So that was one of the big decisions. I was like, okay, there's no point putting 110% of my effort into being a full-time content creator with a Vietnam podcast if I might leave Vietnam one day. So then through that kind of thought process was, and as I mentioned to you, by making this podcast, I'd learned all the skills in how to make a podcast. And then I realized, well, that's a job in itself and I can make money. And I now have a full-time business making podcasts for other people. And I did a talk about this recently. And it was really interesting because some people just didn't get it. Because what I was saying was, don't make money as a content creator. Make money teaching people how to make content. And then one of the first questions in the Q&A was, so how much money do you make as a content creator? And I was like, well, none. I just told you that. I make money teaching people how to make content. And I was just like, oh, that fell on deaf ears. But so it's interesting hearing what you have to say. So I don't want to go down this route too much because I get told that I talk about this topic too much. But you did mention it before we started chatting, and I want to hear about it. You've been in Saigon for 10 years, you said?
Oh, 8 years.
8 years. So about the same time as me. One of the things we talked about, and I hate to ask this question, but how much Saigon has changed. And even on the way here today, I came over the Basson Bridge, which has only been here for like a year. I got the metro last week, which has only been here for like 3 months. The road layout has completely changed. I drove by all these buildings. I was like, this place has changed so much. I thought back to 9 years ago when I first came here, there was barely any cars. So I talk a lot about how it's physically changed, but how have you seen, based on what we've talked about, how have you seen the attitudes change, the generations change? I talked about, being here, the people growing up, and you're very involved in this industry. How have you seen people's attitudes change to work and to life as they've grown up? And as Saigon has changed so much, because some people weren't even about 20 years old, they were 11. When I got here 9 years ago, they've just grown up here. They don't know that it changed so much.
Like Saigon for me have changed like incredibly, but in a good way. Myself have changed as well. First of all, one thing I want to talk about when I'm talking about Saigon is I still see a lot of people have a different, wrong perception about Saigon. For me, Saigon right now is I talk to other foreigners and my friends in other city, like big city, like Washington D.C. or San Francisco, or people in like Europe and everything. And I see there's not much difference between like living here and living there.
Big multinational city.
Yes, and then I travel because of my work, so I travel to Singapore a lot. And I see there's no difference between Singapore and Saigon.
Well, there's the one big difference, the trash. Let's be
Yes.
clear on that.
Yes, let's be
Singapore
clear
is
on that.
spotlessly clean, and Saigon is, in
And
some
the
places,
traffic,
like the trash.
public traffic's better.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay. But I mean, the lifestyle, the service that you can access here. So, like the food, in Saigon, you can find every kind of cuisines in the
It's
world.
amazing, isn't it? And they're
Yeah.
all so good as well. They're all amazing. It's not just
And
Vietnamese
affordable.
food, and affordable. Yeah, no, I love that. Even when I go back, my second ever interview ever on this podcast was with Lewis Wright, who did the music for this podcast that is still more popular than the podcast. I get more comments over the years that they love the music more than they love the podcast, but that's because Lewis's music is so good. But so I did my second ever interview with him because we were practicing, we're testing the microphone. I'd never used it before, and he was helping me. But even then, 9 years ago, he said the same thing. He gets messages from people back home thinking that he lived in like a thatch hut or something like this, and it's like, no, I live in Saigon. It's like a big city. And as I told you before as well, one of my favorite jokes from Tommy Pruczynski was that he was on the phone to his dad, and his dad could hear the traffic in the background. And his dad's like, what's that? Helicopters? And he's like, Dad, it's just the motorbikes. Like, so I do think there is this perception abroad of Vietnam and Saigon being quite backwards.
So I would love to do a test, for the audience, for everyone who's listening to this podcast. Like, just tell me one thing that you have in your city, your big city, that doesn't have here in Vietnam. And I think you're gonna have a hard time finding things that you have in your city, but that like you don't have here in Saigon. I mean, like, we have all the kind of like, let's talk about entertainment, right? You all have all the kind of like entertainment activities that you can find. You have all the good movie that that you can watch in the US, but you can also go to cinema and watch it here in Vietnam. You have all the different sort of like bar and lounge that you can try all kind of like alcohol and liquor here in Vietnam. And what else? All the kind of cuisines and all the like fun, interesting activity like stand-up comedy. We have stand-up comedy here in Vietnam. They've been running that for like 6-7 years, and we have a different kind of stand-up comedy group here. And what else? Like wine tasting, coffee cupping, all different kind of things you can
Coffee is
find here.
amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
It's
thank
really
you.
good. One thing though, that 3 months ago we could have said Saigon doesn't have a metro. Now they can't even say that.
Yeah, now you cannot say that Saigon didn't have metro.
Just
And
one, but we got one line. But we'll
we're
get a
gonna
few more lines eventually.
we get it. We're getting more of it.
I'll give you one thing though. One thing that I miss the most that Saigon doesn't have, that every other city in the world has: good museums and art.
Yes, I think we were working on that. Recently I saw that's really interesting thing. There's Ho Chi Minh Museum. It was a really old traditional kind museum, and recently they're launching a new kind of branding, and it's created by Gen Z. It's really
You said
interesting.
that southern there. You said Gen Z, not Gen Z.
It's so fascinating to see that like young generation, they pay attention more into art and historian and those kind of things that they want to make it better. Like in Saigon, we have the Ho Chi Minh Historical Museum that have a new look. Even the design, the setup, the branding, you can see that they kind of like try a lot to improve that kind of thing. So, and also in Hanoi, there's a activities there's a place it's called Hỏa Lò Prison. Oh, I love that. I love that page a lot. So it's kind of also the historical activities, is historical like museum for people to understand what it's like to be kept in the prison.
It's
So
the
like,
Hanoi Hilton, right, where John McCain was.
yes, and the people who are running the marketing for that place is also like the new one, the new generation. And I love it so much. They're so fun and interesting, and they make it accessible and more fun for people to to create to have more courage and motivation to join and discover those kind of activities. And recently, if you know that the big and famous concert is Anh trai vượt ngàn chông gai, or Chông gai for short, and they also make a new kind of like record for like 5,000 people wearing traditional Vietnamese costume to go to that concert. And then I think in terms of like art and the museum and everything that are related to art, I think we're catching up with that.
You think so?
Yes.
I don't see it yet. Because we went to Hong Kong last year, and there's just like some amazing museums with just incredible art. And I think it's purely down to economic development. I think great art and art in general comes with accessibility, having extra money when you don't have to worry about food and where you're sleeping and where you're working. And all of this stuff and you have extra time, then your brain can start to develop art projects. And Vietnam has obviously come through the last 50 years, massive economic development. And so it's not, I don't think, been at the forefront for the government. It's not been in the forefront for people. They want to make money. They want to develop the country. So there's been no thought of like, hey, let's make a beautiful art museum with crazy art, because people don't have time for that. And maybe in other countries where they're more economically developed, they have. So that's where I'm really excited for the next development in Saigon and the next stage. They need crazy art, fringe art. They need fun art, modern art. Not the traditional, some of these museums you're mentioning, they're historical. They'll have all the old paintings. They'll have old things. And you're like, yeah, that's fine. I want to see young Gen Z coming up with cool, fun, funky art, street art. And I think that's going to be the next big thing for Saigon. Because right now, I think Saigon is a functional city. And it's done so much, it's done amazing to become more functional. I don't think it's the prettiest city in the world.
Yeah, your sharing gave me the idea of why, a lot of, I think art is developed and it being the main topic in other Western country. So I think it's mostly because of the fun behind, right? So a lot, I traveled to Europe before, like for like a month almost. And one of my most exciting activities go to a museum and like spending the hours in that museum. And I know that and I kind of understand who's running that kind of museum. I think the two boss, one is the government and two is like old school and a long lasting family who own the art and who want to just contribute that to the public and to society. So this is where the fun come from. So looking back in the Vietnam situation, I think the government, because we have a different situation of developed our country. So the government, they mostly focus on the economic growth, as you say, which is true. And if that's gonna be, if you want to develop those kind of things here in Vietnam, I can see the two force of that kind of try to make it happen. The first one is the wave of wealthy family here in Vietnam who have a taste, who want to do something for public, who want to leave the legacy and everything. And they are kind of pushing that to happen, doing more activities related to art and this not gonna they're not gonna run in the big museum as I see in the Europe, but they kind of pushing their effort behind, pushing the movement of people. Then they want people to experience and care more about art. This is a first force that I see that's coming a lot. The second one is individuals, and I think because the new generation, they live in the situation they don't have to care much about making money, because their parents been supporting that from their early childhood, so they have more room and more time to think about what they want to do in life. And a lot of people, I understand, they get into art, a different kind of form, like street art, like fashion design, and different a painting, a different type of art. And I think those kind of people also pushing that happen, and they also try to leverage the social media, as we talked earlier, to create more awareness for people. Being an artist also, you can make money and you can make a living being an artist. And they not only try to do that within the context of Vietnam, they want to go outside Vietnam, beyond Vietnam. They're also inspiring to see that a lot of artists here and people working in the art industry, they have their work, which is really exceptional, and they can, win some award globally, and they make an impact outside of Vietnam. Even I have a gift, a beautiful gift for my friend. Is a lamp, and as when I research about that lamp, like a decor lamp, and it win various award in the world, and it's come from Vietnam. It's called Bằng Unboring Project. That lamp, the design is perfect. I love that so much. So I think that's only two like possible and sustainable force that I see that pushing things happen here in Vietnam in terms of like art and museum music in general.
I do think there's one more. There's three things to that, so I agree. It's wealthy families because, again, you talked about Europe and you think about, and even in America, you have these massively wealthy families who contribute to the arts, who help museums, they fund museums. Then you have the individuals who have the more time and they have the drive to create great art. But I think the third thing is the government. As we've talked about, I think they've rightly so focused on economic development. 100%. We want to make this country wealthier. We want to make it better. And art will come after that, because if you think about European countries, America, if you're an artist, you apply for grants from the government. Like, they will help fund. They have budgets set aside for the arts, for culture, things like this. So they help fund that. And maybe the Vietnamese government does that already. I don't actually know. But I presume if they do, it's probably quite small. And I know people always want more for the arts. But maybe that as Vietnam grows economically, they will start to set aside more money for the arts, more grants, things like this. So the young people who then come in and they want, well, I want to do this and I want to make a lamp, or I want to create this crazy artwork. Because I remember when we were in Hong Kong, we were in this museum and it was just craziest thing, because I'm not artistic at all. So you see this stuff and you're like, how did you think of that? We did go to the Crazy House in Dalat. Sorry, getting excited there. And I don't know if you've been to the Crazy House in Dalat. That was designed by a Vietnamese artist. And you're just walking around going, how is this designed? That's absolutely crazy. But I have one last question for you. You talked about Vietnamese families with money and taste helping fund this. So would you say that a Vietnamese family with money and taste is somebody who doesn't have gold on their doors?
What do you mean by that?
You know, when you walk by some of these houses and they're very big and they're very nice, and then they have gold paint. And there's one I walked by quite a few times in Thao Dien. And they have fake marble on the on the wall. And this looks awful. It's like vinyl marble. You're obviously so rich, so I'm not criticizing you. You obviously have this massive, beautiful house, and I'm so happy for you that you have all this money. But money doesn't buy taste.
Oh, I have to agree. And let's divide into two type, like would be like new money, no money. That what people call. Even I don't like that term a lot. But like people who just got rich recently, okay, they don't know how to spend all that money, and they keep getting more money in their pocket, and first thing I have to do things that maybe like to impress people. But people who been rich for like more than one generation, I would say that some people call that their own money. People, they being rich and their wealth being transferred from generation to generation. They started to think about something more than just like showing up to the public. I think that's kind of like human behavior when you first experience things and you want to show out that you have this. And but when people have money for the entire life, and then for their like different generation, and they think about money in a different way. And a lot of people that I know who's what people call it old money here in Vietnam, even not that old. Vietnam is just like booming recently for the past 15 years.
Yeah,
Let's
old money in Europe is probably like 400 years.
I know.
Whereas in Vietnam, it's like 40 years.
I need to clarify that. Yes, but I would say people kind of like want to have a private life. They want to do things that do not show off their wealth, because when they show up their wealth, it's also risky as well. People will like pay attention, and which is what I think that people don't like, and having all the attention from the public. So yes, most of the time I think when people first time they have a lot.
They paint their gates gold. It's one of my pet peeves. Honestly, I walk about my neighbor, I'm like, why? You have so much money, you have this beautiful house, and then you paint it gold, and it looks so terrible. So don't paint your house gold. And if you don't want attention, don't paint it gold either. Adele, I could talk to you all day. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for being on a Vietnam podcast. If you want to check out Adele, go get her on LinkedIn, Adele Doan. 80,000 followers. You're going to get 80,002 after this, so that's pretty good. Thank you very much for watching and listening to a Vietnam podcast. I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Please share this podcast with someone else who's passionate about Vietnam, whether they're visiting or they've lived here or they live here. Share this podcast far and wide. And you can check us out on social media, although to be honest, I don't use social media very much. You can check me out on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And if you want to make your own podcast, go check out Smarter Podcasting or 7millionbikes.com. That's the business that has spawned out of a Vietnam podcast, and we can help you make your own podcast. So Adele, again, thank you very much. This has been awesome. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me.